Picture two men in the same room, same haircut, similar clothes, roughly the same job. But one of them gets looked at twice and the other doesn't get looked at all. You've seen this before, probably more times than you've consciously registered. Two men at the same party, similar in almost every measurable way, and yet a woman's attention drifts toward one of them without her fully knowing why. Ask her afterward what it was and she'll struggle to name it. He was just different. He had this energy. It wasn't anything he said exactly. It's not the jawline. It's not the height. It's not the car keys on the table. It's something quieter than that. Something most men never learn because nobody ever points it out directly. The most attractive men never chase validation. Not from women, not from other men, not from a room. And that single trait shows up in dozens of small ways you've probably never connected to each other. Today I'm walking you through every one of them, because once you see this pattern, you cannot unsee it, in yourself or in every man around you. Let's start with what validation seeking actually looks like, because most men don't realize they're doing it. It's not always obvious. It's rarely a man standing in the corner begging for attention. It's smaller than that. It's the reflex to check if what you said landed. It's the pause after a joke, waiting to see if she laughed enough. It's explaining yourself a second time because the first explanation didn't get the reaction you wanted. It's asking a question you already know the answer to, just to hear something reassuring back. Every one of those moments is you handing your sense of self over to someone else's reaction. And the men who never do that carry themselves in a completely different way. One that reads instantly as attractive, even to people who couldn't tell you why. Here is the first place this shows up. They never over-explain their decisions. Watch how most men respond when a woman questions something they did. Why did you cancel? Why were you late? Why didn't you text back sooner? The average man immediately produces a paragraph. He justifies, he defends, he adds detail after detail, hoping enough explanation will make the discomfort go away. A man who doesn't chase validation does something completely different. He gives the real reason once, briefly, and lets it sit there. He doesn't need her to feel okay about it immediately. He trusts that a short, honest answer is enough. And if it isn't enough for her in that moment, that's information too. Not a problem he needs to fix by talking more. Over-explaining doesn't come from having bad reasons. It comes from needing the other person's approval of your reasons. And approval you have to hunt for isn't approval. It's a transaction, and everyone can feel the difference. Here is the second place this shows up. They never fish for reassurance through text. You know the pattern. A man sends a message, doesn't get an immediate response, and sends a follow-up that isn't really a follow-up. It's phrased as a question, but it's actually a request for comfort. Everything okay? Did I do something? You've been quiet. A man who isn't chasing validation doesn't need to know in real time whether things are okay. He assumes they're fine until he has an actual reason to think otherwise. He lets silence be silence instead of translating it into an emergency that requires him to check. This one is subtle because it feels responsible on the surface, like you're just making sure things are good. But underneath it, it's the same reflex. You want a signal that reassures you, and you're willing to look slightly needy to get it. Attractive men skip that step entirely. Here's the third place this shows up. They never announce their value. Insecure men tell you what they have. I make good money. I've dated a lot of women. I run my own business. Watch how often that information gets volunteered instead of discovered. A man who isn't seeking validation lets his life speak for itself. If it comes up naturally, it comes up. If it doesn't, it doesn't. He's not performing his resume in conversation because he doesn't need you to be impressed in order to feel like the resume is real. The moment you need someone else to acknowledge your value before you believe it yourself, you've already told them where the power sits. This is why quiet confidence reads as more attractive than loud confidence almost every single time. Loud confidence is confidence that needs an audience. Quiet confidence doesn't check if anyone's watching. Here is the fourth place this shows up. They never shift their opinion to match the room. Pay attention to how some men's opinions seem to change depending on who's listening. Around one group, one political take. Around another group, the opposite. Around a woman he's attracted to, whatever she just said, echoed back with slightly different words. That's not being agreeable. That's outsourcing your identity to whoever's in front of you at the time. Attractive men have positions that don't move depending on the audience. They can disagree with a woman they're attracted to and stay completely relaxed about it, because their sense of self was never dependent on her agreeing with them in the first place. Women pick up on this faster than men think. A man whose opinions bend to please people doesn't feel like a man standing on solid ground. He feels like a reflection, and nobody is attracted to a reflection. Here's the fifth place this shows up. They never entertain drama that isn't theirs. Someone starts an argument that has nothing to do with anything real. A jealous comment, a passive-aggressive dig, a test disguised as a joke. Most men engage immediately. They defend, they explain, they get pulled into proving something. A man who isn't chasing validation can let a comment just exist without needing to resolve it. He doesn't need every interaction to end with him being understood correctly. If someone's trying to provoke a reaction, the absence of that reaction is the actual answer, and it lands far harder than any explanation would. This one takes practice because our instinct is to correct the record. But constantly needing to be understood correctly by everyone is its own form of validation seeking. Sometimes the most attractive response is simply not participating. Here is the sixth place this shows up. They never make themselves smaller to keep the peace. This is the one that hides the best because it looks like kindness. A man goes quiet about what he actually wants because saying it might create friction. He agrees to plans he doesn't want. He swallows an opinion because voicing it might make things awkward. Every time you shrink yourself to avoid discomfort in someone else, you are trading your presence for their temporary comfort, hoping that trade earns you approval later. It rarely does. What it actually does is teach the people around you that your preferences are negotiable and theirs aren't. Attractive men take up the exact amount of space they actually occupy. Not more, performing dominance nobody asked for. Not less, disappearing to keep everyone comfortable. Just their actual size, stated plainly, without apology and without inflation. Here is the seventh place this shows up. They never need to win the argument. Watch what happens when most men get into a disagreement with someone they're attracted to. It becomes about being right, getting the last word, making sure their logic is acknowledged as correct before the conversation can end. A man who isn't seeking validation can lose an argument on points and walk away completely unaffected because his worth was never riding on being declared correct by someone else. He can say you might be right, actually, and mean it, without that costing him anything internally. This is one of the most attractive things a man can do in a disagreement, and almost nobody does it, because almost every man has quietly tied his self-worth to being right in the moment. Here is an eighth place this shows up, and it's the one most men have never even thought to look for. They never perform their reaction to good news about themselves. A promotion, a compliment, an attractive woman showing clear interest, a friend telling him he did something impressive. Watch what most men do with that moment. They light up visibly, sometimes almost desperately, like the compliment finally confirmed something they weren't sure of. The bigger the reaction, the more it reveals how much that external confirmation was needed. A man who isn't chasing validation can receive genuinely good news and stay level. Not cold, not unaffected on the inside, just not performing the size of his relief outwardly. He can say thank you, mean it, and move on without needing everyone in the room to witness how much that praise meant to him. Ironically, this restraint makes people want to give him more of it, not less, because unearned enthusiasm feels available, and available things get taken for granted. Now let's put this together with a real contrast, because it's easier to see once you picture it directly. Two men get the same text from a woman they've both been seeing for a few weeks. The text is short. Hey, kind of a busy week. Talk soon. Nothing alarming, just brief. The first man reads it 4 times. He starts composing a reply, deletes it, writes another one. He asks if everything's okay. He mentions he noticed she seems distant lately. He signs off with something slightly needy, hoping to get a reassuring response back. He spends the rest of the evening checking his phone every few minutes, replaying the wording of her text, trying to find hidden meaning that probably isn't there. The second man reads the same text, feels a small flicker of noticing it was short, and puts the phone down. He goes back to what he was doing. He doesn't need to resolve the uncertainty immediately, because he doesn't experience uncertainty as an emergency. If she's genuinely busy, this changes nothing. If something else is going on, he'll find out eventually, and he'll deal with it then, not in his head 3 hours early. Neither man knows something the other doesn't. The information is identical. The only difference is where their sense of okayness is sitting. One of them needed her next message to feel stable. The other one already felt stable, and her next message was just going to be additional information, not a verdict on his worth. That difference, replicated across hundreds of small moments like this one, is the entire gap between a man who reads as needy and a man who reads as attractive. It was never about the 6-hour reply, or the argument, or the compliment. It was always about where the man's stability was actually coming from. So here's the pattern underneath all 8 of these. Every single one is really about the same thing, whether your sense of self depends on someone else's reaction, or whether it doesn't. Men who chase validation are constantly performing for a verdict. Did that land? Was that enough? Are we okay? Every interaction becomes an audition for someone else's approval, and audiences can always tell when they're being auditioned for. It creates a subtle neediness that undercuts everything else a man might have going for him. The looks, the job, the personality. All of it gets discounted the moment someone senses he needs their approval to feel okay about himself. Men who don't chase validation walk through the exact same interactions completely differently. Not colder, not arrogant, just less dependent on the outcome. And that lack of dependency is what reads as attractive, because it signals something true. This man's sense of self exists independently of me. Whatever happens here, he's going to be fine. And something in human psychology finds that combination of engaged but unattached deeply magnetic. So how do you actually build this instead of just understanding it intellectually? Start by noticing the moments where you're explaining more than once. If you find yourself repeating a reason, elaborating on something you already said clearly, stop and ask why. Usually it's because the first version didn't get the reaction you wanted, and the second version is really an attempt to manage someone else's feelings about your decision rather than to communicate. Next, catch yourself before the reassurance text. When you feel the urge to send "Are we okay?" sit with that discomfort for an hour before deciding whether the message actually needs to be sent. Most of the time, it doesn't. The urge fades, and you realize the silence wasn't actually a crisis, it was just silence. Next, get honest about where you're performing your value instead of living it. If you catch yourself bringing up an achievement in conversation specifically because you want a reaction, notice that impulse without judging yourself for it, and then choose not to say it. Let it exist as something true about you rather than something you need acknowledged. Next, practice holding an opinion in a room that might disagree with it. Not aggressively, not as a personality trait, just as a small rep. Say the honest thing when the easier thing would be to agree. Watch that nothing actually falls apart when you do. Next, when someone tries to provoke you into a reaction, practice the pause. Let a comment sit unanswered for 3 full seconds before you decide whether it deserves a response at all. Most provocations are only powerful if you immediately validate them with a reaction. Finally, notice the disagreements where you're fighting to be right, rather than fighting for anything that actually matters. Practice saying "That's fair," or "I see it differently," but you might be right. And notice that your world does not end when you're not declared the winner of a conversation. And when good news comes in, a compliment, a win, clear interest from someone you like, Practice receiving it quietly. Say thank you. Let yourself actually feel it internally, and resist the urge to broadcast how much it meant to you. That restraint is not suppression. It's the difference between a man who needs the room to confirm his worth and a man who already knew. None of this happens overnight. This is a rebuild of a reflex that's probably been running since you were a teenager trying to get approval from people whose approval felt like survival at the time. But every single time you catch yourself seeking validation and choose not to chase it, you are quietly building the exact trait that makes certain men magnetic without them ever trying to be. The most attractive men never do this. Not because they were born without the need for approval, but because at some point they stopped feeding it. And the less they fed it, the quieter it got, until eventually it stopped being something they had to manage at all. That's the whole secret. Not a trick, not a line, not a technique you perform in the moment. Just a man who no longer needs the room to tell him who he is. If this reframed something for you, subscribe. New videos on exactly this every single week. And comment below and tell me, which of these 8 did you recognize in yourself the most?